Greetings fellow members of Paradox. This video is for your eyes only. Do well to pay attention now, as this recording will self-destruct in 30 minutes.
Hello. So you have chosen to learn how to play Paradox, the most fun Deadlock character, and I congratulate you on your good taste. This video is designed to go into great detail about who Paradox is, what their abilities do, as well as guide new players into the character. If you are already decently knowledgeable and more interested in hearing a variety of tips, tricks, and advanced techniques, timestamps for that, as well as everything else I talk about in the video, are included in the description. I will not be going over specific numbers such as damage or cooldowns, as Deadlock is a game in active development and these change almost every other week. And before we get started, if any developers are watching this, and you guys are pretty cool and really listen to your community, so I assume there is a good chance you are, please do not change Paradox too much. She is perfect. All of her abilities are fantastically designed, and I love her to death, and if you change her in any major way, I will cry. And with that out of the way, Paradox is a member of an organization by the same name. Pronouns are she, her, though being part of the Paradox Collective, you may notice they refer to themselves as we or simply by Paradox as well. Paradox is a group of thieves, a guild with the ability to manipulate time and space. To join Paradox, one must don a mask and take on the organization's name as their own, which allows the guild to be both everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. Paradox is known for their elaborate heists against high-status targets. They steal priceless artifacts, state secrets, and celebrity blackmail, only to put them on display to the public, simply to make a statement that nobody is out of their reach, that nobody is safe from Paradox. Now, as far as combat style, Paradox is an ability-focused, versatile fighter who excels at all ranges of combat, as she can manipulate the positioning and movement of her opponents to keep herself always at an advantage. Her weapon is the trade secret, a burst-fire, medium-range rifle. It fires 5 shots per click of the trigger and has a soft recoil with each bullet. She has 3 dashes and a relatively slow base movement speed, though this is compensated for in her abilities, all of which either allow her to move faster or slow down her opponents, making her incredibly movement-oriented. Paradox's abilities might seem simple on first impression, though they are dense with nuance, with how they work as well as how they interact with one another. Her first ability, Pulse Grenade, is a thrown projectile that travels in an arc. Pressing 1 will equip the Pulse Grenade and show a projected trajectory vector. Pressing the fire button will then throw the Pulse Grenade, or pressing 1 again will unequip it and not use up its charge. Upon hitting a surface or character, it will explode in a large area and deal spirit damage, apply a movement slow, and apply a damage amplification effect that will last for quite a while after each blast. It will then pulse repeatedly in that area, dealing the damage and applying the effects to any characters inside multiple times. The damage amplification only applies to the damage that Paradox deals to the target, though it does stack with each consecutive pulse and resets the duration when it does. Spirit Power will scale the damage that the pulse grenade deals. Her second ability, Time Wall, is a flat barrier which can be set in front of Paradox. Hitting 2 will immediately summon the wall a little bit in front of them. It can float in the air, be placed at angles, and clip through geometry, though certain geometry can sometimes cause the wall to appear at different heights or distances. This is sometimes a little bit difficult to predict and somewhat glitchy, so it could very well change in the future. The wall is not a solid wall, and it can be passed through by you, your allies, and any of your projectiles as if it wasn't there. Though whenever an enemy's projectile hits the wall, it will be stopped in place for a short period of time before continuing to travel in its previous trajectory. This can allow Paradox to catch projectiles and dodge out of their way before it hits them. If an enemy walks through the wall, they will also be temporarily slowed down as they pass through it. The wall will deal spirit damage to them, and once fully leveled, apply a silence effect, preventing them from using their abilities for a short time. Her third ability, Kinetic Carbine, is a single charged shot fired from her weapon. Pressing 3 will immediately begin charging the weapon, and once it is finished charging, you will be given a short period of time to fire the charged shot. During this time, your speed will be amplified. Firing the charged shot requires at least one bullet in your weapon, which it will consume, so it cannot be fired while reloading, though it can be charged while reloading. Firing the charged shot at an enemy will deal spirit damage to them and freeze them in place for a short time, preventing them from performing any actions for that duration. This makes it a very good combo opportunity for lining up other attacks and abilities. It can be fired early at any point while charging, though it will deal less damage and have a shorter freeze duration. It is also important to keep in mind that you do not get the speed boost until you have finished charging. The speed boost scales with spirit power, making Paradox faster the more spirit power she has. It can headshot and trigger any headshot related items, though the headshot damage is only an additional small percentage rather than the full amount that a regular bullet would deal. Most importantly, the Kinetic Carbine's damage is based off of your weapon damage rather than your spirit power, even though it deals spirit damage, meaning that any improvement to your weapon damage increases the damage of your Kinetic Carbine. Finally, a unique feature of the Kinetic Carbine ability is that aiming it while in mid-air will freeze Paradox in place. This allows you to more easily aim while jumping above cover or off of a zipline. Lastly, her ultimate, Paradoxical Swap, is a projectile that can be fired at an enemy to swap places with them. The projectile fires instantly when pressing 4 and will travel in a completely straight line at a high speed. Once it hits the target, that target and Paradox will be locked into an animation where they will move towards your previous location and you will move towards theirs. During the swap, they will take damage which you will gain back as health, and this damage is amplified by spirit power. The target and you are both vulnerable during the swap, so any attacks or abilities that deal damage to your opponent will still deal that damage as they are being swapped, such as being pulled through a pulse grenade or time wall. During the swap, you are given Spirit Lifesteal. This applies to damage your other abilities deal as well, not just the swap, meaning that swapping enemies through a pulse grenade or time wall will heal you in addition to any of the damage done by the ultimate itself. Paradox's ultimate is particularly potent with team play, as dragging an enemy directly into a group of your teammates is often a death sentence. And that is it for Paradox's abilities. So, let us move on to... Paradox is extremely versatile and has a lot of strengths, and while she has some notable weaknesses, those weaknesses aren't as direct as with many other characters. Her versatility comes from the way her abilities can be intertwined in so many unique ways, for wildly different effects, with each ability having the capability to do damage, movement, and control. Her bomb can deal damage over time in an area, be used as area denial to prevent enemies from approaching, or flush out enemies hiding from behind cover. Its movement slow also can aid Paradox in catching up with or escaping from opponents. The wall can be used to control an area by allowing you to shoot the opponents without allowing them to fire back at you effectively, or help you escape a situation by slowing them and their attacks down while you get away. Your kinetic carbine can deal damage very well by itself, but you can also just use the speed boost to both engage and disengage. Its freeze can also combo with Pulse Grenade to force opponents to stay inside of it longer or allow you to easily line up your ultimate. And as I mentioned earlier, your ultimate can combo with your Pulse Grenade and Time Wall as you forcefully move the enemy through them. But your ultimate can also allow you to escape certain situations, as if you see an enemy while you are trying to get away, you can swap positions with them to do so. The way you combine these abilities, along with the different contexts that you'll find yourself in, create dramatically unique and different situations, such as combining Pulse Grenade and Time Wall in a close quarters fight to make life a living hell for your enemy and likely forcing a retreat, or jumping off of a building to use your ultimate on an enemy still on top of that building to swap places with them, leaving them as the ones falling off and you safe atop the roof. She has 3 primary strengths, I would say: her picking potential, zoning, and agility. Paradox can deal incredible single target damage, pull targets out of groups of enemies to secure kills, or outmaneuver opponents in a fight while sustaining damage. She is capable of escaping far more situations than she has any right to, and she has the ability to force opponents into unfavorable positions while being proficient at punishing mistakes, and all of that together can make her incredibly annoying to deal with. She's also a fantastic team player. Throughout the entire game, you should find the time to coordinate with your team, as your abilities provide incredible setup, combo, and punish potential. Her main weakness lies in her inability to deal with large groups on her own. While her bomb does deal AoE damage, she just doesn't have the capacity to deal with a large group of enemies quickly. And if she is forced to engage in a fight like that, she will struggle to do much. She excels far more at singling out targets from groups and ensuring they die by pulling them out of position and focusing them down. Notice, however, that I said if, as this weakness can be mitigated by your ability to choose your fights. Being able to move around so easily means that you should be capable of avoiding any fights that are unfavorable to you, or hold out stalling while you wait for your team to arrive and turn it into a proper team fight. Her other noticeable weaknesses would be a middling weapon that is usually outdamaged by the more aggressive characters, and her ability to farm camps. Her farming is not awful by any means, but her wall and her ultimate don't help at all when killing camps, and the kinetic carbine can only ever hit one target, meaning her only real means of clearing camps quickly is a combination of shooting them down as well as her pulse grenade. This can make clearing higher tier camps difficult for Paradox unless you specifically build around that, though she can always quite reasonably clear smaller camps from the very beginning. Speaking of building, Paradox is one of the most open characters to new builds and experimentation. With so much going on in her kit, you can build her in any way you want, and it'll have some amount of merit to it. From support builds to melee builds, you can really experiment with items. So whatever you personally find fun about Paradox, or whatever creative strategies that you come up with, you can build into that. But if you look around at the builds, you will see two common categories: Grenade Paradox and Sniper Paradox. Pulse Grenade and Kinetic Carbine are her primary damage abilities, and they scale off of two different metrics, one being spirit power and the other weapon damage. So a Paradox oriented towards weapon damage will have a much more powerful Kinetic Carbine, and a spirit power Paradox build will have a much more powerful Pulse Grenade. You don't necessarily have to choose one over the other, but when figuring out your build, it is an important factor to consider. And, well, with all of that out of the way, I believe it is now time for... Paradox is a very complicated character to play. I would even say that she is the most complex character currently in Deadlock. She demands good positioning, enemy and team awareness, map knowledge, precise movement, and high accuracy in order to perform well. Good communication is also very important, so be prepared for a highly demanding learning curve. This is also what makes them so fun to play for me. Playing Paradox will have you constantly finding new and creative uses for her abilities, making her incredibly dynamic and thrilling to play. So, to help you on your journey, the rest of this video will be advice for your time on the streets of New York City, starting with easy tips and tricks that you can incorporate into your gameplay immediately. You can activate and charge Kinetic Carbine while reloading your weapon. You will not be able to fire the ability without being able to shoot, of course, but charging your Kinetic Carbine during a reload does mean that you will have a fully charged shot once you have finished reloading, without having to waste time charging it up that you could have instead used firing your weapon. You can also benefit from the speed boost portion of the ability while reloading. And remember, your Kinetic Carbine speed application is multiplicative, not additive. So, any items that you buy which increase your movement speed cause the Kinetic Carbine speed amplification to become faster as well. You can almost guarantee landing your ultimate ability by using the stop and swap technique. Hitting a target with your third ability, Kinetic Carbine, will freeze them in place. Then, immediately using your ultimate on the frozen target can practically guarantee that it lands. So, if you ever want an easier time hitting with it, feel free to keep your ultimate on standby for when you land a Kinetic Carbine shot rather than throwing it out by itself. Against close range opponents and in close quarters fights, placing your wall down and then rotating around it will force your opponent to make a difficult choice between either walking through the wall and suffering the consequences of doing so, or staying on the opposite side of the wall and having their projectiles made ineffective against you. Due to Paradox's ultimate being a projectile, there is actually a period which you can place a time wall after using your ultimate but before you are locked into the animation. This will mean that the target is then swapped through the wall during the ultimate, as well as creating a barrier for their escape. This saves time in comparison to placing the wall before using your ultimate for the same effect. When fighting creeps, especially during the laning phase, you will have to remain aware of your ammunition due to the burst fire of Paradox's weapon. Having 5 or less bullets in your magazine when killing a creep with your gun means that you will lack the ammunition to then confirm the souls that pop out. Ensuring you can confirm them via a melee attack or reloading before you kill them can help you not lose out on those souls. If you want to be particularly fancy, kinetic carbine only requires 1 bullet. So, if you have 5 bullets left in your magazine, activating kinetic carbine and firing it immediately to kill a creep will leave you with 4 shots left to confirm the souls that then come out. In general, Paradox requires good ammo preservation. Knowing when to reload early and planning out how you will use your abilities during and after a reload can often make the difference when securing a kill. Remember, none of her abilities interfere or slow down her reloading her weapon, so do not be afraid to use them to sustain damage while you do. Moving on to more specific interactions with the various characters of Deadlock, I will warn you that these are the most prone to changing in the future as characters are potentially reworked or added. The bullets from Haze's ultimate, Bullet Dance, are capable of being frozen by your time wall. This means that if she uses her ultimate on you, you can survive it by placing your wall down and then putting it between you and her. Remember, you have to move to the side as the bullets are only temporarily stopped by the wall. And also remember that placing a wall actually puts it some distance in front of you, meaning that if you are aiming at Haze and placing the wall, if you are too close, you will actually place it behind her and not between the both of you. If you are too close to Haze, I instead recommend you place the wall while facing away from her and then dash through it. Lash's ultimate, Death Slam, can be grabbed out of the air by your ultimate. This will not prevent the Death Slam, but it will stop Lash being able to follow up with a ground strike, as well as getting you personally out of the way of their ultimate, so it's always a good idea to do so. Similarly, 7 can be moved during their ultimate Stormcloud, which can help place them in a bad position where their ult is no longer effective. You may think that Abrams can be grabbed out of the air during their ultimate Seismic Impact, and they can, but their final level on their ultimate actually grants them immunity to stun effects, preventing you from swapping with them. You'll see a particle effect when this is the case, so don't try and swap with an Abrams if you see that. And whenever you do swap with them, try and move them somewhere where their ultimate won't hurt your team as it will still go off. Any effects, such as Yamato's ult, which prevents stuns, can also prevent your ult from working. Vindicta, Grey Talon, and Ivy can all have their flight abilities cancelled completely by being hit by your ultimate. Your ultimate leaves you vulnerable, despite giving you some hidden resistances, so you are capable of being stunned or rooted during it, but those will not stop your ultimate from playing out. Meaning if you're about to be stunned or rooted or CC'd in any fashion, timing your swap just before the effect begins will allow you to ride out the clock on those effects while inside of your ultimate animation. Be sure to use your ultimate before they activate though, as any root effect makes it impossible for you to use your ultimate until it is over. This is particularly useful against characters such as Warden or Seven, as their root and stun effects have a clear wind-up period which you can use to time countering it. Your ultimate still works against anyone inside of a viscous cube. This won't deal any damage, but it might actually allow you to move them really quickly into an unfavorable location at a long range, though you can always move a cube by simply punching it. And the final thing I'll say about the swap is that if an enemy Moen Krill is using their ultimate combo on one of your teammates, you can swap with that Moen Krill and it won't stop their ult, but it will move them and the person that they have grabbed, meaning that you can drag your ally out of line of sight of the enemy and potentially save them. This is a particularly niche interaction, but one I find extremely funny. Grey Talon's ultimate guided owl can actually be caught by Time Wall, which can help you dodge it, of course, but it can also help you stall the Grey Talon long enough to potentially kill them. If you have good communication with your team, you can set up any abilities that require precise aim, like a friendly Vindictus Assassinate or a Bebop's Hook, by calling out a target before freezing them in place with your kinetic carbine. Finally, some of the juicier and more niche tech currently in the game. If you ever want to try and steal the Rejuvenator and you're playing Paradox, come on, well of course you do, you can actually queue up a melee parry to happen pretty much instantly after your ultimate is finished by spamming the parry button. This doesn't play out the full parry animation and is a lot harder to react to. You can parry an enemy team by, swapping with someone who is in the pit that is next to where the Rejuvenator is falling, hitting parry on the way down, and then punching it yourself. You'll probably die very quickly after, but here's a clip of me doing that actually, and surviving even, so, it's possible. As mentioned prior, Kinetic Carbine can freeze you mid-air while you aim down sights, and this can give you plenty of time to hit with it while mid-air, and if you combo this with your ultimate and your wall, you can swap someone into the air, through your wall, and leave them with nothing to do but to fall down and give you and your teammates plenty of time to attack them while they are completely exposed. Doing this properly does require you to be quite comfortable with zip lines and knowing when it is safe to be on them, but it is a very useful piece of tech to keep in mind. A neat one is Warp Stone movement tech, which is applicable to any character with a Warp Stone, but it is a very popular item for Paradox, which makes me want to mention it here. When you dash along the floor, there is a flicker of blue on your stamina gauge, and this signifies that you are allowed to perform a dash jump by pressing the jump key. It will require and consume an additional stamina to do so, but it will launch you forwards and into the air a bit. If you use the Warp Stone in between the initial dash and then the jump, you are actually capable of preserving your dash momentum through the Warp Stone's teleport, which would normally put you back to a regular movement speed. It is a very precise trick, but there's no actual penalty for doing it wrong, so feel free to try it and use it whenever you have the item. And lastly, your ultimate takes priority over practically every other movement ability in the game, meaning you can swap with a Wraith right after she uses her teleport, and while it might temporarily seem that she was successful in getting away, your ultimate will put her right where it wants her to be. So, be bold. catch anyone trying to get away. If you can land that swap, there is no escaping you.
Because, well, after all, there is no escaping the grasp of paradox. We are everywhere. We are nowhere. And we are inevitable.
But the roses paled, the moon turned